Putin held a meeting with Prime Minister Mishustin, who had prepared a report on the situation in the Russian economy. According to him, GDP growth from May of 2022 to May of 2023 was impressive and reached almost 5.5%. The thing is, the high growth rates in May this year are associated with a low base effect, and Mishustin said nothing about it. After all, May of 2022 was a failure, and GDP fell by almost 4.5% in annual terms in just a month.
We know
that most of the statistics are classified because Russia does not want to show how it is actually affected by the sanctions. Any figures that will be voiced by Russian officials must be interpreted, first of all, through the prism of propaganda, and only then be based on these figures and talk about some economic indicators. Therefore, most likely, these are elements of propaganda too. Russia really wants the sanctions to be lifted, and therefore it broadcasts to the whole world the picture that the sanctions do not work.
The euro exchange rate at the opening of trading on the Moscow exchange rose above 100 rubles on July the 6th for the first time since March 2022. Exchange analysts point out that the fall of the ruble is a consequence of a reduction in export earnings and of high budget expenditures for the war against Ukraine. However, the Russian central bank declares no reason for concern in that.
There are quite a lot of players in Russia who benefit from the low exchange rate of the ruble. In general, this is the government and all budget distributors, because the cheaper the ruble is, the easier it is to fill the budget with money coming from abroad. In the context of a growing deficit, it is beneficial to depreciate the ruble.
But if a cheap and unstable ruble can be beneficial to the Russian leadership in the near future, then in the long run this situation will lead to an increase of inflation, which will reduce the wealth of common Russians even more. Imported goods will become more expensive, and the few purchases in dollars that are still available will become unaffordable for Russians. The authorities of the aggressor country, in fact, feel the record-breaking budget deficit with a cheap ruble at the expense of the Russians.
There is a sharp impoverishment of the Russian economy. Impoverishment in the sense that the economy is completely on a military footing. On the other hand, if you look at this growth, which is in the Russian economy, then it is observed only in a few sectors, and these sectors are related to the war. Those sectors that are aimed at the average consumer not only do not show even slow growth, they show a decline.
The situation leads to the impoverishment of the population, the freezing of infrastructure projects, and the underfunding of the social sphere as a whole. And as soon as the Federation's budget stops spending so actively on the military-industrial complex, the insignificant economic growth will stop completely, and Russia will enter a prolonged period of stagnation. Reported by Diana Kulesnik, Valeria Nekipelova, UATV News.